dog training, and welcome to another episode of Dog Talk. Today, I want to talk about how the dog training industry is failing you, the dog owner. And it is really something I've noticed, especially over the last, I would say, 2 years or so. There are certain conversations that I keep having with my clients and even people who call for consultations, and they always kind of go in the same direction. And there's a pattern. And this is a pattern that's not a good pattern that indicates a larger problem. And that is not just something that started recently. The problem that I'm going to talk about has existed for maybe 20 years or so, but it's becoming worse and worse and worse. And it definitely affects dog owners. And that's the main thing. This is really for dog owners. I'm not telling dog trainers anything new per se with what I'm going to talk about in this video. So this is really dog owner focused. But the pattern that I see is that people who contact me have been through the ringer. They have started off usually with positive reinforcement only trainers or force-free trainers or whatever the names and labels they apply to themselves. Very few call them positive only. That's a term that is often thrown at them, but it's not so much used by them themselves. But like force-free is very common, or positive first, or positive mostly, or whatever. I mean, there's so many different terms they come up with. But basically, a group of trainers that wants to avoid any kind of aversive tools. Prong collars, e-collars, show collars, martingales. For some reason, they seem to like head collars, which are actually highly aversive, but okay. But they generally want to avoid aversives. That's kind of the idea. They want to do everything with positive reinforcement and some negative punishment, to be technical. And then on the other side of the equation, there is another group of trainers they usually refer to as balanced, which does use tools, but not necessarily not use reinforcement. That's just an accusation that's made, but it's not true either. So, but the trainers that apparently a lot of my clients over the last 2 years or so have started with are the force-free trainers. And they've never really gotten anywhere. And I should say the people who call me are the people who have something that they need to stop. Their dog is doing something they can't have. Let it be separation anxiety and destruction in the home as a result, or aggressive behavior, or super fearful behavior. And they've tried the force-free route with lots of treats and just different kind of differential reinforcement strategies, which is a very, very common approach, different strategies around positive reinforcement, and maybe some progress, but not even anywhere near what you're looking for, and many made no progress at all, especially when it comes to some kind of behavioral issues. And they haven't usually just been to one of them. So they've given 2 or 3 of those guys a chance. And then after that, nothing worked, and they spent a good amount of money doing that, and it didn't really get them anywhere. They do look a little deeper, and they begin to explore more and not just stop on the first page of Google and keep going in terms of dog training, and do discover there are other things that can be done that just nobody has ever suggested to them. So they're trying to explore that, and then they're trying to find trainers who can help them in with using tools, whatever the tools may be. And the most common one they usually end up with first would be one of the big chains that are really focused on e-collar usage. So there's like 2 particular dog training franchises in America where e-collar everything is just what they do. And I'm not going to name the names here, but they're well known. So they're not big secrets. They usually have like 2-3 week programs, and everything's e-collar and low level conditioning and blah blah blah. So, and that tends to not really work that well either, especially with fearful dogs. So this is part of the problem that we have in the dog training industry. We have on the one side a group of people that for the last 20 years or so has been pretty undisturbed in their claims about positive reinforcement is all we need. We don't need to do anything else but that. Which, if you just think about it for a moment, makes no sense at all if you understand what that word means. But then on the other side, we have the balanced trainers. And balanced trainers is a term that is really, at this point, very unfortunate and really meaningless. It's actually, there's no value in that word anymore at all, because balanced means somebody uses tools, training tools, prong colors, e-colors, whatever, but it doesn't tell you anything about what they're doing with them and how they're going about it. So somebody who would use 95% compulsion, so pretty much an idiot with lack of morals. So 95% compulsion and 5% rewards would be a balanced trainer. And somebody who uses 95% positive reinforcement and 5% aversives is also a balanced trainer. And clearly, these are vastly different types of trainers and people. So dumping them all in one bucket doesn't really make sense. So, but that's what a dog owner faces. So if you're looking for a trainer, these are the things you're gonna run into in your searches. And if you start Googling first and you start looking, and forget social media for a moment because I'm gonna get back to that. But if you just go by Google searches first, you should be doing positive reinforcement. That is what science says. That's what everybody does. That's the modern way. That's the way to go. Sounds good. I like my dog. I don't want to do anything bad to him. I don't want him to get hurt. Positive reinforcement it is. That seems to be the way to go. That's what science says. That is what you find when you do Google searches. You can go to ChatGPT and have them write you a dog training essay. It'll be the same thing because ChatGPT works off the internet. And positive reinforcement, let's be clear, is a huge component of any training that a professional trainer will do. So somebody who knows how to train dogs will use tons of positive reinforcement. There's no question. You know? But that's not all professional trainers use. That is what we find people who try to restrict themselves to positive reinforcement and then differential reinforcement, and so basically catching them while they're good, elaborate processes around catching them while they're good. They're not going to be able to help people who need to stop things, because reinforcement is not designed to stop things. Reinforcement is about making behaviors happen, making them more reliable, making them more frequently to occur in the future. So if you want to train a command, use positive reinforcement. If you want to teach your dog something new, like a trick, positive reinforcement. If you want to teach something new, you use positive reinforcement. If you're competing against challenges in the environment and competing reinforcers, you introduce negative reinforcement, but you're still in the reinforcement realm. And positive reinforcement is fantastic. You need it. It's not in doubt that you need it. But the problem with positive reinforcement is this: it works phenomenally well until it doesn't. And we talked about this in the reinforcement episode somewhat in more detail, but if there's something else your dog wants and you got cookies to offer, well, you want something else. Your cookies don't mean anything in this context. There is no positive reinforcement strategy around that. You have to convince your dog that that over there is not accessible, while this over here is what he needs to be doing. And by its very definition, that's not reinforcement. That's not positive reinforcement. That is most likely going to be negative reinforcement. It's not going to be punishment either. It could be, but it's not most likely going to be initially anyways. But now you need other things that you cannot do with just rewards, because there are no strategies that use rewards that are reliable in stopping things. Now, of course, there's some exceptions to what I just said, but all in all, for the most part, that is what you're going to run into. If you're trying to restrict yourself as a trainer to a force-free route and you're not going to use any tools and it's all just reinforcement, you're going to be limited in what you can accomplish. There will be a lot of things that you cannot do because you can't accomplish them with what you have restricted yourself to for whatever reason. Now, if you don't restrict yourself and you use other things, then you can help, but then you have to understand the learning science behind these principles. And if you don't, then you can mess around with these tools forever, and as long as you want, you're not going to accomplish the goal either, because there's right ways and wrong ways of using and doing everything, right? It's like with everything in life, with everything you're ever gonna do, you can do it the right way or the wrong way, and if you do it the wrong way, well, it's not gonna work. Um, but that's kind of what a dog owner looks at when they're trying to find out, well, what should we be doing, and let alone even trying to find a trainer that is reputable. That's a daunting task if you're a dog owner. We talked about this in an earlier podcast about finding dog trainers. What do you go by? You can go by certifications, but do they mean anything? What's in the course, the certification course? What did they have to do to get that certification? What do they have to do to maintain that certification? Is it anything good? Is the school good? I mean, what's taught there? All these questions you have no answer to as a dog owner. You can't know. So it's really complicated, right? It's hard to assess who is good. There's so many certifications. What's the value of them? I mean, I shared my views on that before, which ones I think are good, and I'm sure there are others, but the ones that are standing out and which ones are questionable. But it's hard as a dog owner. So you have these complex questions of like, well, what should we be doing in the first place? What's the right way of going about training? And then, well, who do I find someone that's capable of doing that correctly? Who has the skill set? And there's so many things that can go wrong in that selection process because it's really, really difficult. And it's hard. Don't beat yourself up as a dog owner. I tell this all my clients, don't beat yourself up because they call me and I'm like the fourth trainer or fifth trainer who's trying to help them because they've done so many things and they all didn't work or worked a little bit or worked just in one area but didn't ultimately accomplish the goal. And maybe the goal thereafter cannot be accomplished. That's another thing. It's entirely possible that trainers have promised them the blue out of the sky. Happens. And they weren't honest about what can realistically be accomplished. Will a fearful dog that you have become a social butterfly? Well, no. That's extremely unlikely. Is that impossible? No, it's not. I've seen some pretty cool things, but that's not the common result. The dog will get better, but he's not going to be like, I love everybody now. So there's so many things that as a dog owner, you have no way of really assessing until you get there and you see it being done, and then the outcome of that either worked or didn't. And if you need to stop things and somebody wants to go about it just with rewards, does this work on people? Can we stop people? Can we stop children? Can we stop criminals? Can we stop adults by just changing up the way we reward them? Earlier, less, more, different schedules, different frequency. Does that work on people? No, of course it doesn't. It's ridiculous, right? You have to, if you want to stop something or enforce something, you have to do other things. We all know that. So there are other aspects to creating reliability and fixing problems and getting dogs to stop doing things that have nothing to do with handing out cookies. And that is what the failure of this industry is. There is a lack of education amongst too many. I mean, obviously there's fantastic trainers too. And it's not everybody. It's never everybody. Don't like say he hates everyone. I don't. But there is in a large group, there's a lack of knowledge of what the limitations of their choices are and a lack of honesty sometimes. But for the most part, I think trainers really believe that this can be done this way because somebody told them that they trusted. And maybe even that person believes that. But the reality is, if you need to stop something and you just have reward strategies, that's not going to work. Right? So, and then the other thing is when you mention a word like punishment, that's a word that sets people off. Like punishment is, oh my God, we don't like punishment. We don't want that. But I guarantee you every dog owner punishes their dog every day for something, trying to get him to stop doing something. I mean, it's never everybody, but like most of them. Most dog owners. But they don't think of it as punishment. They just, no, don't do that. Don't stop that. No, don't that. Come here. Don't touch that. Don't get off the counter. That may be completely ineffective how you're going about it, but you're trying to stop something. And if you're trying to stop something, you're attempting a punishment of some sort. And nobody thinks of it in terms of punishment. You think of it in terms of correcting or reprimanding or stopping or restraining or whatever, right? But nobody thinks of it, I punish my dog when they yelled at them for stopping things. And some dogs, when you yell at them, they'll cower in a corner until you can't make up with them. And some dogs, when you yell at them, they don't care. So it really also depends also on the dog if whatever strategies you're choosing have an effect or not. Just because it works on one dog doesn't mean it's going to work on another. But that's another level of complexity in these choices. So this is the problem that dog owners face. And it's going on for a long time. That's the first part I wanted to talk about. And there is no easy answer. I mean, you just have to, if you want to educate yourself, you have to find good sources. So let's talk about social media for a moment, which is horrible when you're a dog owner looking at social media, because it's very easy in human nature trying to conflate popularity with good quality. Popularity and good quality on social media are often mutually exclusive. First, love stuff is staged and fake, right? Like it's TV in a way. Other people got very, very skilled in setting things up the right way. But a lot of accounts that have a million or even more followers don't show you good dog training. They show you some stuff that's really, either it's completely silly, or something that's not going to work on most dogs, or it's brutal. There would be other line. It's like really horrible training. It's not even training. It's just like some stuff is abusive, no doubt about it either. So there's a lot of crap out there. And everybody is an expert, and everybody has the answers to everything, and everybody knows how to do everything better and different, and has their own system and whatever have you. So social media is horrible because it presents these things to you that are supposedly so fantastic, and they don't reflect reality at all. Really good dog trainers have better things to do than to post videos every day. If you see an account that posts multiple times a day, whatever he's doing, he's not becoming a better trainer. Right? He's doing whatever to get followers and clicks and likes. But that's good for YouTube revenue, YouTube ad revenue, because it drives income that way. But it certainly doesn't speak to the quality of the trainer. So yeah, I don't think there's a single account that posts every day that has quality on it. It just doesn't. No. Doesn't really exist. So that's side. So the second part that I want to talk about in this context is what has happened in the last couple of weeks, because there's a good chance that we're going to see some changes. So I said for the last 20 years or so, the force-free training community has been pretty undisturbed in their claims of what isn't science, and declaring themselves the more advanced trainers, and claiming they have the answers when they can actually not produce the results that dog owners are looking for. Despite of that, they're completely undeterred of claiming they're the best, when in reality they got nothing to show for it. But a couple of weeks ago, I think a month or so maybe ago, something has changed. And what has changed is that one of the top trainers in America, and one of the top trainers in the world, Ivan Balabanov, put a video out. And it was called The Real Facts of Science-Based Dog Training. And I'll put a link in there. I will put a link in the show notes. And I encourage you to watch that video, because that video goes over 60-some studies over the last 50, 60 years. Studies that are based on experiments that have been tested over and over and over and validated over and over and over, and have proven principles of learning science that are irrefutable. They have never been disproven. They can't be challenged at this point. I mean, you could try to challenge it, but you would have to set up an experiment and refute them. And nobody has ever managed that. And that video has created a stir in this industry, because it attacked straight up, not by attacking them, but by presenting facts, the position of the force-free community, making the claims of being the best trainers, when in reality not having anything to show for that. And here you have someone who has a track record, who has a lot to show for what he says and what he does, who is a 2 times world champion in one of the hardest protection sports there is. He's ran an ASPCA shelter in San Francisco. He's trained guide dogs for blinds. He worked in every dog sport there is. He trains pet dogs, behavioral dogs. He works on some of the toughest cases you've ever seen. Helps tons of shelters. So this is someone who's really unimpeachable in his track record and his results, presenting the actual science. And of course, the other side attacked him, but not a single person tried to actually refute a single thing he said. They're just making general statements and said, oh, we have other studies, we have surveys, we have questionnaires, we have this and we have that. But none of that invalidates anything that was presented because they can't. And then other behavioral scientists who work in other dog training organizations started to jump in. Other behavioral researchers made their own videos and concurred with Ivan on a lot of these points. Because in the scientific community, there is no dispute about how you stop behaviors effectively and correctly. That only exists in the dog training world. Among scientists, punishment is not a controversial topic. It's a very well studied topic and a very well understood topic. And it's understood how to do it and how not to do it. And so it's an interesting development that has occurred. And the conversation is still going on. And then Ivan topped it off by talking to another professor who's been studying operant principles, positive, negative reinforcement, punishment, that kind of thing, for 30 years. Still a professor at the university, still teaches students, still writes studies. And they talked again about the science. And there's a scientist actually explaining the science. So it becomes very difficult when you have this like force-free only philosophy based on surveys and questionnaires that nobody can reproduce, making claims that don't hold up, can't produce results that dog owners are looking for. And on the other side, you have the actual science that produces results, produces outcomes, but hasn't been the narrative for the last 20 years because people in that world have been busy training dogs, learning and becoming better and better and better, and just left those people over here alone. But now it's gotten so bad that they've stopped leaving them alone and said, okay, we need to set the record straight and we need to have a conversation about what science is and isn't when it comes to that, because we can't continue to watch this. And that brings us to the third part of why we can't continue to watch this. So, short example here in the US, and I'll give you a couple examples of what has happened in Europe, because that can absolutely happen here, and that would affect you as a dog owner in a very bad way. So, there recently was, or there's still going on, there's currently a debate in San Francisco where animal rights activists trying to get a ban on electronic training collars, e-collars or shock collars, however you want to refer to them, implemented in San Francisco, the city of San Francisco. And a radio show put up a debate about this, and they had the animal rights activists making their case, and they were confronted with Michael Ellis, another top-level trainer in the United States. There's his own dog training school up in the Bay Area. Another person with unimpeachable track record of results in every realm of dog training that he's touched. Somebody who knows how to do all these things correctly, presenting facts. And whenever they're presented with facts, it doesn't go that well. Now, of course, people called in and chimed in, but that's just opinions. Like the ultimate conversation that was had between those two, there wasn't really a whole lot that held up. I'm going to put a link to that as well. But here's the thing where it gets up interesting even more for dog owners, because maybe even you want a tool ban, and I really tell you you don't, but I'll tell you why you don't want either. But these animal rights activists are extreme. They don't just want to ban the tools. They are completely out of their mind. So what they're proposing in San Francisco is, if you have one of those tools, if a ban is passed, here is what should happen to you as a dog owner, you should pay a fine. You should lose your dog. That's right. You can't have a dog anymore because you're an animal abuser. So you must lose your dog now. And to top that off, 6 months in jail because you're a hardcore criminal for using an e-collar in dog training. A tool that is used to stop livestock chasing, rattlesnake avoidance training, tail chasing, tail mutilation. I mean, so many things you can stop with that if you do it right without any problem for the dog. And for that, you should go to jail and lose your dog. That's what's coming. And that all comes out of this trajectory of force-free only, and now we're going to ban all the tools. So obviously tool bans haven't happened in the United States. They have happened in some counties. But they have happened in Europe, they have happened in other parts of the world. So let me give you a little preview of where this can go. In Austria, nice country, Alps, wonderful mountains. When you take your dog in the mountains, you have to have your dog leashed at all times. You need to carry his ID cards and papers. You need to carry his vaccination records. And you need to carry a muzzle for your dog at all times. If the police stops you, and they are walking around in the mountains because it's Austria and they got nothing else to do, if the police stops you and you don't have these things, it's some hefty fines. You have to carry a muzzle wherever you go. And it started the same way. It started here. Force-free only. Let's ban all the tools. Let's have laws. And now the dogs are out of control and we're going to try to contain this somehow. In sports clubs in Finland, where they've also banned all the tools, people went underground, and people are people. They do what they do. And if you have bad people, they will do bad things. If you have people that abuse dogs, they will continue to abuse them even if you ban tools. So in Finland, they did an underground video in a dog club. And because they no longer have e-collars that could be taught how to use them correctly, they are now beating the dogs. They're using kettle prawns and other beautiful things. Far more dangerous, far more violent, far more harmful. There are things like that. In Switzerland, they've banned e-collars completely, but they accept they can be used for something, so there is 2 or 3 anointed special dog trainers in the country that you get to see if you need something that requires the usage of this tool. And then you have to travel, stay in a hotel, go there and see if they can fix it in an hour or two, in a session or two. So it's quite expensive. That's Switzerland for you. So in Germany, they banned the prong collars last year. And on January 1st, they were quite surprised when the police departments told them, well, no more police dogs because you took the tools away that allow us to create reliability to have these dogs safely in public amongst humans. And then the politicians got all very upset because the animal rights groups had told them too that, oh, we don't need any of this. We can do this all with positive reinforcement. We don't need any tools. And the police dog trainers said, no, they lied to you. So that doesn't work that way. And police dogs is a very rich tradition in Germany. So by now they've gotten all exceptions, obviously, because you can't not have police dogs. But it's gotten so bad in Europe. And it's been going on there for quite a while. I mean, they had these bans in place for 20 years in some countries. Gotten so bad that they're now thinking about reversing them. So we're having the early stages here, or maybe kind of mid stages, but not early stages, mid stages of this. And this can go down rabbit holes that affect you as a dog owner drastically. If you have dogs that do stuff that needs to be stopped, if you need dogs to be safe around rattlesnakes, if you have dogs that chase their tails, if you have dogs that self-mutilate, if you have dogs that act aggressively around children or chase kids on skateboards or whatever it is, that requires attention, because otherwise your dog will run in front of a car and get run over or hurt somebody or hurt himself or You got the idea. You got to keep tools available. I'd be the first one to admit that tools like e-collars are completely overused. They shouldn't be used as much as they are. But banning them is not the answer. We've seen what happens in other countries once you do that. You can abuse anything. So it's not about that. This is what the industry of dog training has allowed to happen. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And hopefully what happened a month or so ago can shift it in the right direction. We see a lot of hopeful signs. Some conversations are starting. They haven't changed anyone's mind yet, but at least there's conversations now. Conversations that we didn't have before. So hopefully, for the benefit of all dog owners, the worst can be averted and we don't fall into the traps that we've seen in Europe and other countries. And we can prevent some of that from that happening here. So, a little bit different topic today. Obviously not about training, but I think it's important. I think dog owners should understand where these things are heading because they all look harmless in the increment. Oh, well, let's ban these tools. I don't like them. That sounds good. Well, we don't need them. If you don't need them, if science says we don't need them, we shouldn't use them, right? Well, yeah, so this is maybe a little bit more to it than meets the eye. And whoever claims to be science-based, well, it may not be, right? So science tends to not favor one side only. Science tends to be more nuanced in every aspect. And once the real data is there, things become usually very detailed. Whenever something is presented as it's just this is it, and it's an extreme position, most likely not going to be true. I mean, it could be, but it's unlikely to be true if it's an extreme position. So you got to have really some good evidence that what you're saying is actually true. There should be some real solid backup. So if you're a dog owner, keep an eye out for what goes on in your county, what goes on in your city. Maybe do a little Google search, right? So not everything is bad, but some things are going overboard and some things are problematic. So here in California, last year we passed Assembly Bill 1901. And in the initial draft that I read, there was lots of stuff in there that everybody who boards dogs is supposed to do that seemed not help anybody to have a safer experience. That didn't seem to address any problem. Just create a lot of paperwork. And then in the final version that was actually passed and that's now in effect, it was reduced to something that is not a problem at all, really, and does make sense. So you have to now, as a dog trainer with my clients and every dog trainer in the state, has to sign a paper where you certify that there's no animal abuse charges against you and that you've never been convicted of animal cruelty. And nobody on your team has either. That's a good thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. So that should not be a problem for any trainer to certify that they have not gotten themselves in trouble that way or have abused dogs that way. Because if they have, they should probably not touch dogs anymore. I mean, there's always situations where maybe somebody got charged with something that went down the wrong path. You never know. I never say never. It's like extreme positions usually don't work out. There's always it's always something somewhere that probably doesn't fit that bill. But that's a regulation, a law that was passed. Perfectly fine addition. Maybe it makes a difference. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But if somebody has an animal cruelty conviction and lies on the form and it's found out, well they're going to be in big trouble. And so that probably has to happen before this has a real impact. And maybe it will. Hopefully it will, actually. It'd be good. But yeah, so not every law, not every change is a bad thing. Well, it depends on what it is. But you always have to look at the details of it. Don't just accept the first narrative you hear. Don't let just one side brainwash you into, well, this is the only way this has to be. Whoever wants to take a more nuanced approach probably has a little bit more information to offer than the ones who come with a blunt hammer and say, nope, ban it. Can't have that. Versus, well, let's train people and use it correctly. It seems to be smarter. Okay. I think I rambled on long enough. I hope this was interesting because I think this is important to you as a dog owner. And I know we're all busy, but whenever there's dog legislation and people bring stuff up and they talk about bans or so, as a weigh in, call into the radio station. Maybe write your congressperson if you had a dog and he was helped by a tool. Let people know that there is a benefit too. It's not one-sided. And participate, because ultimately all of us will be harmed. Our dogs will be harmed, and people may lose their dogs if things like that just go through. So it's up to all of us to participate in stuff like that. So this is my public service announcement of just raising awareness. That's the whole point. Okay. We're going back to training-related and dog-related topics in the next podcast. So this was a little bit of an outlier, but I think it was important. So I hope it was entertaining, was informative, and you got something out of it. And I'll see you next time. Bye.